Hi guys, this is Debbie. Today I am creating my first diorama card, at least I think that's what they're called, using the Silent Night Make a Scene etch dies from Spellbinders. So the die set that I got is an add-on set, and it creates this pretty little scene inside the card. And here are all the fun dies that come with it. We've got Santa and his sleigh, a track for him to ride on, a couple of snowflakes, some trees, some holly berries, some houses, and some kind of funky looking extra pieces that if you have not done this type of card, it's the kinetic card, it's the Create a Kinetic card die set that you need for this. And these are basically made to work with that other die set. So, of course, because I wanted to make that cute little scene, I went ahead and purchased this one to see. First off, I want to see how this thing works. This is different than the other interactive cards that I've done. And until I cut everything out and assembled this part, I didn't know how big the card was. It's actually a 5x7. Now this one isn't that sturdy because I used regular weight. So until I cut it out, I didn't know how large it was going to be or how it was going to work. But this is a 5x7 card instead of the regular A2 that I do, and it's really large. And you've got this big space that's going to have your diorama in it. When you pull the little tabs out, you've got your pieces in there. So the Silent Night Make a Scene die set is part of the Holiday Melody collection. So let's go ahead and start on putting the card base piece together, the interactive piece, and then we can add all of our cute little things from the new set. One thing I did find is that there are instructions on the Spellbinders website, and I will attach copies of those down in the description below. There isn't one yet for the Christmas scene add-on that I'm going to be using today, but this gives you an idea of how it's supposed to work. And then looking at the image, you can make sure that you get all of your little pieces the right height and all that kind of stuff. So I've got my instructions off to the side so I can make sure that I'm doing the right pieces in the right order and knowing exactly what it's supposed to be. So first I'm going to die cut the base piece out of 2 pieces of heavyweight cardstock. Okay, so now we have our main panel and our back panel cut out, and this is where the understanding how the dies work is going to be really helpful. On this main die, there are a couple little marks at the midpoint on each side, and that's going to help you to be able to line up the window portion, which has some little notches cut out of it. Okay, so now we've got the back and we've got the front. And we've got our little window there. So this next piece is what had me confused. We've got this big rectangle with some notches and stuff on it, and I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing with that. But the way that it works, and the reason I say that it makes it very, very versatile, is the pieces mean you can change things around. It also means that they only had to create the dies once instead of at least twice, because this is going to basically be the 2 side panels from our original card. So these are our little stitched marks. Okay. Then we've got this piece. Now this piece has no cutting plate on there. It is basically just a positioner, I would call it, You just put that in the middle and it just nestles in right there. And then we've got these three. Now these three basically cut out the little slots that our cross pieces are going to go into. We've got a long one, a long slot, we've got a medium slot, and then we've got a small slot. And what you want to do is you want the small one to be towards the inside, towards this piece here. But what this does is this is the front of the card, so this is going to be the lowest panel, the lowest cross piece. This is going to be the next higher, and this one's going to be the highest. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and run that one through my Gemini Junior. So this is what your piece is going to look like, okay? Now we need a second piece, but we need it to be pretty much the opposite, which means that if you're using a pattern paper or anything and you want to make sure that the pattern paper is the same on whichever side, you'll want to make sure to flip it and cut on the opposite side. For me, it doesn't really matter, so I am just going to go ahead and cut it. I mean, the other option would be to flip these guys around. You can do it either way. Another thing that I neglected to do first time around was add my little pull tabs. Now there's this little die here that will add the pull tabs to your window. So what you'll want to do is line it up. I'm going to put it on the other side with the cutting blade, but just so that you can see, when the first die cut through, it did put that little tick mark, and I think I can still see it a little bit from the pencil. And you'll want to line it up right with that little notch in the die. And the rest of this is just a guide, so you basically just line up the edge of your paper with the edge of that guide. Okay, so back to the mechanism. So again, it cut the same way as the first one did. So now we have two pieces that are mirror images of each other. Okay, so now we are going to need to do a fold. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a mountain fold on this part with the larger panel, and then a valley fold on this end. Okay, and now we're going to put them basically in place. We're going to assemble our mechanism. So this I'm going to have as being the front of my card. So I'm going to turn it upside down. And then I am going to fold these like this. So we've got it all folded up, and we've got these little tab pieces towards the end. And do the same thing on both sides. Now we're going to just tack it down with some washi tape. Okay, now I'm going to take some strong double-sided adhesive and a couple of slider guides. Now, when I was cutting out my main panel, I also used this die, and it basically just cuts a couple of pieces of rectangular cardstock that has a slight embossing line at the two ends. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to put your adhesive in those areas. And next we're just going to be positioning them right here on the edges, and this is going to keep the rest of our panel basically in about the right spot. Okay. So now that's what the front of the card's going to look like. At this point though, I think I am going to go ahead and before I start doing the rest of the assembly, I think I'm going to do some decorating for the front. When you pull it out, that looks nice. And you could put a little sentiment on there as well, or a little place to write something on each side if you choose to. So I'm taking out some of my distress inks, and I haven't used it before, but I think I'm going to start off with the iced spruce. And I'd say that counts as a blue. It's kind of a bluish, greenish something. But I'm going to go ahead and just add some of that on here. I think that would be good for a winter background. Oh. So the instruction says that the front panel needs to be 4 3/4. I wrote it down because this is really small type and I had trouble reading it without zooming in. It is 4 3/4 by 1 7/8, and my printer prints too light. I don't really know why. The middle section is 4 3/4 by 1 and... This one says 1 5/8, so I think it depends on what piece you're going to add on to it. So regardless, they all need to be 4 3/4 wide. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and start with. So I've got another piece of heavyweight cardstock, and I'm just going to cut myself off a 4 3/4 inch strip. So the way that these work, this is going to be the bottom of our panel, okay? So it lines up somewhere down here, probably at the very bottom so you don't waste any cardstock. This one goes above it, and that's going to, and then the space in between is going to determine how high or how low your panel is, okay? And since we're using this one in the middle, it would basically slide right in there. I'm going to go ahead and cut one piece at 1 7/8, and then I'm going to cut out, use the die to cut out the rest of this. Then I'm going to line up this guy with the bottom and with the edge. And what that's going to do is make it so that this edge actually cuts on this line, and that way I can make sure that the rest of it lines up as well. And then I'll just put this piece in pretty much in the middle. So let's take a look at that. And blend a little bit of that iced spruce onto the edge, just to give it a little bit more shape and dimension. Okay, and then now I'm going to show you how this goes into our card. Okay, so basically, it looks like I still have that flap under there. That needs to be out. So the way that it works is one piece goes in that side, and one piece goes in this side. Okay, so that's kind of how it goes, and it is floating, so it's going to, it could move around. When you open your card, there is that first piece of that dimension. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the others, and I'm going to use the measurements that I did on my previous one, and I pulled that from one of the instructions. As I mentioned, you could use whichever instructions you want to use, but I went with the front seam being 1 7/8 high, the middle 2 3/4, and the back one being 3 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. Okay, so now that I got all the pieces in there, including Santa, let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. I think I like that. I did notice that with these turned in, it's going to cover up some of that background that I did, so I decided to instead fold them out before adhering it down to that card panel that I inked up. So I'm closing everything up again. And then I'm going to put some double-sided adhesive on both of these flaps before adhering it down to this part. So after I get that adhered down, then I can start adding in some of these little houses that I cut out. Because I want to make sure that it stays in place well, I'm going to put multiple strips on here. So now I'm going to just pull it open, and it opened fine, and you can see that little Santa. It also stands up fine, so this could go up on someone's mantle and look awesome. Okay, so now I need to add my little houses in. Okay, this time I'm going to try to go in from the top, slide the long piece in. Okay, so that one's fine. That side goes in fine. And even with my tweezers in the way, it still will shut, which is good. Okay, so you can see the little houses and you can see Santa and his sleigh. Okay, so let's try putting this little guy in. Again, this part goes in first, the top, because it's the one that can slide the most. Okay, so we slide that one in. We try to get on this side. And let's see what the snowy hill looks like with everything else. And I think that that looks pretty good. And just looking at this, I'm probably going to want to put something over in this area. But again, we have to remember that because everything has to lay flat, I've got basically no space for any kind of height. So as long as it doesn't really go up over that snowbank, I think I've been messing with this thing too much. It's now getting harder and harder for me to open it. But as long as it doesn't go up too much over that snowbank, I should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and add him low on the front of the card. And just to make sure he's not up too high, like right at that edge, so that'll be fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and add this guy back in and see how that does. Okay, so that scene looks okay. And everything, again, folds flat. Okay, so got this all layered up. There's about 6 layers of white cardstock plus the silver. And I think I kind of want it to float over the opening. So I grabbed a piece of just scrap packaging that I've had in my stash for a while, and I'm going to go ahead and just trim this one down. Okay, because this one is plastic, I do need to use some score tape to hopefully hold it in place. I'm going to just slide that under and tuck it under. Okay, and then I should be able to do the same thing on this side. And I'm going to add my little snowflakes. finish up this card and to dress up the front of it, I decided to add a bunch of little gems. So that's going to finish up this card project for today. Thank you so much for dropping by and taking a look at my first diorama card ever. I hope this inspires you to get busy and create something great. If you like this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up, and I would love for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And remember guys, if I can make it, you can too.